Welcome to TAO-Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Lou Corletto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust. My guest on today's episode of TAO-Living, the Art of Living, is a former NFL All-Pro, actor, playwright, speaker, leadership trainer, and national bestselling author. Bo Eason started his career in the NFL as a top pick for the Houston Oilers. Continuing on with the San Francisco 49ers, during his career, Bo competed besides and against some of the greatest players of his generation. After his football career ended, he branched out into acting and wrote a one-man play called Runt of the Litter that went on to Broadway. Now, as a speaker and leadership coach, he trains some of the most successful people in the world, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, C-suite execs, on how to communicate for maximum impact and success. His book, There's No Plan B for Your A-Game, Be the Best in the World at What You Do, is a national bestseller. The book debuted on the USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and Publishers Weekly bestsellers list and was named one of the 4 hottest new books of fall 2019 by Inc. magazine. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Bo Eason. Bo, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry.
All right, Lou.
Yeah,
Lou, good to see you, man.
Brother, it's an honor and a privilege. I am grateful for you taking your time to share with me, first and foremost, because I'm being selfish, and definitely the listening audience, because you have got so many irons in the fire of serving people on global levels that I know your schedule is packed. So I'm immensely grateful for this opportunity. So let's capitalize on that. So with your permission,
let's do it.
I would like to just unpack a few things. And I think first and foremost, what I'm being called is people are being challenged, right? This last year and a half, 2 years, from policies and procedures and all kinds of stuff, right? People are losing businesses, lives are being jacked up, some are being destroyed. And coming from your background of being an NFL player and then having a overnight career-ending injury to this is what you've trained your entire life for, to be this pro athlete, and then in a blink of an eye, it's gone. So one, how do you recover from something so devastating? And not just recover, but as you have, thrive, right? So for the listening audience, if you, if right now you feel like you have crocodiles chewing at your hiney, please pay attention to what this man's about to deliver.
Yeah, it's a great question and a great opener, right? Because, I love this one quote. I can't remember who said it, somebody smart. But they said, the world was not, created by great men or great women. The world was created by demanding circumstances. And sure enough, that's what we're in the middle of, the most demanding situations of most of our lifetimes, right? So, same thing happened to me, when I was in the NFL. And, unbeknownst to most people, when you see a player in the NFL, that is accumulation of about 20 years of work. And then finally they get drafted and finally they're in the NFL. So they're living their dream. And that dream is very short-lived, but you have to train for so long to get there. And then once you get there, you're having to survive week in and week out, especially if you're built like me, the injuries, because these guys are big and they are fast. And that is the most shocking thing when you get to the highest levels of, imagine any athletic event, is that everybody is bigger than you and everybody's faster than you. And you've never faced that your whole life. Your whole life, you were kind of the guy or the gal. You were the fastest, you were the biggest. And now you're up against people who are bigger, better, faster. And now it's about like upping your game and adapting to that new demanding situation. And you do, out of survival, you adapt to that new demanding situation. And those of us who adapt the fastest get to play the longest, right? We get to play, the sport or the dream that we want. Well, the same is true. That's happening to us now, right? We're facing a demanding situation. Now, if we didn't have this demanding situation, we wouldn't have to adapt that much. We'd kind of, just chill. We kind of just get copacetic and okay with everything. But now we're faced with a demanding situation, which, a lot of it is make believe, and a lot of it, I don't know what's real and what's not. But we still have to adapt to laws and policies and goofy things that we may not believe in. So that's how the world is created, through these demanding situations. So now I think your listening audience, Lou, should take advantage. Where everyone else is being victimized by the situation, you and I could actually go, well, this is a demanding situation, and that's the only way to adapt, is to have a demanding situation, just like survival in the NFL or survival in the jungle. That's why it's exactly why if you look at, if you're on the Serengeti and you see a fat lion or a fat cheetah, that's shocking, right? There's no such thing as a fat lion or a fat cheetah on the Serengeti, because they've had to adapt to a demanding situation that doesn't allow them to be overweight, because if they're overweight, they're dead. So same is true for us. Take this thing by the horns, as my dad used to say. My dad was a cowboy, and he always goes, son, you got to take that bull by the horns. And so you got to take all this bad news and all this victimization, you got to take it by the horns, and you got to ride this sucker, and you got to end up on top somehow. And the only way to end up on top is to actually accept the demanding situation, adapt to it the fastest, and then go from there. I've had to do that over and over in my life, just because of injuries and, the things that come up, and other situations that come up that I've had to adapt to, but I always end up on my feet. And if you notice, you do too. Like, you do too. All of you end up on your feet. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And here's another thing I always rest my hat on, Lou, is, you and I couldn't be here unless our ancestors were great at adaptation. They were world class at adaptation. They knew how to compete for shelter, for food, for mates. They knew how to compete against things that were bigger, stronger, and faster than them. And they won. That's why we're here, and then dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers are not here. So you and me, are from good stock, right? We've got the right stock. We've got what it takes to adapt to this new demanding situation. I say take it on. Let's take that sucker on. I had to do that at the end of my football career too, just because I didn't know, you train for 20 years to be the best at something. And then you get there, and then you have a bunch of knee surgeries, and they go, you know what? You've lost a half a step. You're out of here. That's how fine line this, who gets to stay and who has to leave. That's the line, right? You lost a half a step. Bye-bye. We got another guy who's younger, more healthy, and it hasn't lost a half a step. You and me can do this, right? We've done it before. Our ancestors have done it since time. So I'll pause right there, Lou, and we can go deeper if you want to, or go on to the next thing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bo. It's beautiful. One of the things I share with a lot of my tribe is down at the biological cellular level, right? So literally a single cell in the body, it can only adapt, grow, or survive. It can't do both at the same time. And since we're just composed of a whole bunch of single cells to make up this body, then first thing is you got to get out of survival mode, right? So 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whatever, boom, this adapting situation came up. If you're still in survival mode, then you can't adapt and grow. You're just trying to tread water, right? So surviving is first. Otherwise, thinking about growth when you're about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger isn't really a productive process, right? And so first handle survival and then get into thriving, right?
Yeah.
So from that place, what are a couple key strategies to assist people to bounce out of that, right? So boom, right? I got punched in the face. I'm down on the canvas.
Mhm.
I just feel like giving up because it's just too much. What's the deal? How do I take that breath and get that inner choice again to get up, using the canvas metaphor, get up into life again and go, grab the bull by the horns and steer it where I want it to go?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, good. This is a great place to start. So, the first thing I did, and the first thing that I would recommend that all of you do, and I'm guessing a lot of you have already done this, is I never add things to my plate initially. I usually eliminate things from my plate. So if I want to go somewhere and I want to achieve something like playing in the NFL or becoming a playwright or being the best dad or being the best husband, whatever it is I want to be, whatever my declaration is, I don't add things to my to-do list. I subtract things. I eliminate things. And I have found that to be world class, it's the person who actually eliminates the most that gets to the top, not the person that does the most. Is the person who does usually the least and is not distracted. So the first thing I would do is I would cut something out. Like, ask yourself this question: what will I no longer consume? What will I no longer consume? Now, the first and the most obvious choice is you cannot consume the corporate media distractions, social media distractions, because they have no idea what greatness looks like. They have no commitment for you to be great. They just don't believe in it. They believe in mediocrity, and that's what they promote. Also, they're very confusing to human beings because you and me have these great animal instincts, right? We're like these predator animals that have precise instincts about the world. And when we watch the news or we watch social media or we're told by gossipy friends what is the current policy or law that we can and cannot do, our instincts get thrown off because our instincts are telling us one thing. And those instincts are right, by the way, and they're always right. It's just you don't trust them anymore because you've been inundated with bad data, with confusion. So the whole world, you're not alone, the whole world feels out of balance right now and uneasy. And because for the first time in their lives, they're not trusting their instincts because they're being told something, but they're not seeing and feeling what they're being told. So the greatest example I can give you is I saw this once on the news where there's somebody, a reporter standing in front of a burning city. And the whole city is rioting behind the reporter. All the buildings and cars are back there, are all on fire. And the reporter's holding a microphone, speaking to us, speaking to the camera, and says this: "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a peaceful protest." And so me, who's aware of these things, and you, who's got your raw animal instincts, 100% in condition, and you trust them, your eyes are seeing something and they're telling you something that your instincts are not feeling at all. And so now if you do that enough, you start to not trust your own instincts, the very thing that got us this far. The only thing that got me to the NFL was I had acute trust in my own hair on the back of my neck. I knew when a 300-pounder was sneaking up behind me, and I didn't have to look, right? So now a guy is standing in front of a burning city going, this is peaceful. There's nothing happening back here. Don't worry about it. And now we're all discombobulated and not trusting the most valuable thing that we got, which is our own instincts. So we've got to eliminate them, eliminate those distractions and those lies that fly in the face of Mother Nature. And we got to get back to our own nature and begin to trust it again, because we are right and we've never been wrong about that. That is the very first thing I would do, Lou. And once you do that, once you have what it takes to eliminate that, watch how much more time you have during the day. And watch how much more freedom of movement and freedom and access that you have to your own voice and to your own vision. Because now it's not being messed with all the time. This thing is, I think that is the most damaging thing that has happened, especially to us. You know, I know you wouldn't be on watching Lou's podcast if you weren't in touch with natural law. You just wouldn't be here. It would be silly for you to be here, wouldn't it? So I know you know what I'm talking about, but still, even us people who, you know, surrender to the fact that we're, you know, predator animals with stealth-like instincts, we still get thrown off. Because guess what? That news media, that culture, this culture that we live in, they're very smart. I'm not saying they're not smart. They are.
Oh.
They know what they're doing, right? But our instincts are actually smarter than all of them, right? Even though they went to the Ivy League school and have the fancy friends and the fancy high rises, our instincts are much better than theirs, and they hate that. Because they can't compete there, right? You and me compete from a certain place. We know that competition is the first rule in biology, right? We don't pretend that competition is a bad word. We don't go, oh, there shouldn't be any need to compete. Well, that's just not reality. That's not how we operate. That's not how our ancestors got us here. We know that competition is the first rule in biology. Our instincts tell us that we must compete to thrive, to survive and thrive, and to build our family, protect them and feed them, and do what we're here to do. So that elimination rather than adding something to the to-do list. And I think if you take on that first elimination that we just discussed, I think that goes a long way of you getting right back on track with your voice, your vision, your story, and then really start to build your clientele, build your team around you, and build your audience around you based on that.
Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just heard there is especially the go on a media starving diet, right? Don't worry about your nutrition right now. Unplug from allowing this information that is intent on confusion. And as Bo said, they're brilliant. They're not just smart. They're brilliant, dark, but brilliant. And they use something I call conscious languaging because they're brilliant in that regard. And they'll use words to cause confusion and steer us in a different direction to do just that, cause us to distrust our own self. And then we forget who we are and we start to live in someone else's agenda. And as I say with people is, who's writing your script? You or someone else. And that's on you, right? That's on me. If I let somebody else write my life script, that's on me. I can play victim, or I can actually play victor and get the reins back in my hand and take control of my life again and stop allowing other people to tell me how things should or shouldn't be, right? So, please hit rewind and listen to that piece again. I would like to almost a quantum leap jump, something you shared there. 2 days ago, I was working with a client, and this guy is high achiever, literally twice Mr. USA bodybuilder. And we were having this competition. We were having this conversation, and it was really interesting that he started to acknowledge that he was still carrying guilt about being great.
Mm.
And from the work that you do and all the people that you serve, why do humans go there, right? Because we're meant to be great. Why do we go there? And then if we do go there, what's the way out? To stop listening to the lie. I shared with him the Marianne Williamson quote, "Our deepest fear," right?
Yeah.
And it's not that we are inadequate, right? We are powerful beyond measure. It's not our darkness that frightens us, it's our light. And playing small doesn't serve anybody, but we tend to do it. When I look back at my life in the past, how many times I did to not make other people feel insecure around me. And it's just nonsense, right? And looking at I believe it was the Greek root etymology of competition. It's not a negative thing. It is two people conspiring to move each other forward.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And you know, a lot of people, I have this program, which Lou is a part of, this team, and it's called The Best. It's so simple because it's called The Best. So, you know, all the parameters, every speaker, everything that is surrounded on this team has to be the best, or it can't get in. It can't get into the bubble of the best. Right. And some people are offended by that because they were raised in a family that actually being the best was rude, or it wasn't the way you wanted to go. In fact, it was frowned upon to be the best, because if you're the best, people are going to point you out and they're going to attack you and they're going to undercut you and they're going to, you know, try to do things to you. So it's actually better to be mediocre so you don't get pointed out. And so that's kind of our leadership model, if you notice right about now, right? Like our leadership model is, let's just get the most mediocre leader, right? So that no one hurts them. Right. So if you say we elect a leader who's got a past, you know, and has had to fight and has had to achieve, and I'm sure they've got some skeletons in their closet. Well, those, then they have scars on their face. Those are the leaders I trust. If you don't have scars, like one coming down your eye, like about like this, and one under the chin, and then an invisible one right here across your heart, you're not a leader. I don't trust you. you have to show and be the person that has actually run a bunch of miles and failed a bunch of times. That's where leadership comes from. We never choose from that pile because they go, oh, they have a scar on their face. I just can't look at my leader who has a scar on his face. Well, I would prefer that, right? So that is really, you know, that's really where we are in our world. Lou, my mind is skipping. What, am I answering the question? Tell me the question again.
You are, but it was also on me because I hit you probably with three all at once. I made a quantum jump from people coming out of survival into thriving, right? And so I made this quantum jump around sharing about this client about greatness and the dance between why do people feel guilty about greatness even when they're expressing it, right? He won 2 titles and still has guilt, right?
Yeah.
And then the majority of the population who doesn't, because it's seen as arrogance, you know, whatever the yucky, just fit in, right? Fit in, don't rise above. That's not cool. That's not part of the society. And that's a disrespect to the soul of that person and everybody on the planet.
That's right. Yeah. What an inspiration for somebody to, you know, Lou, a great example of this. I was at my son's basketball game the other night, right? So I'm at the game and I'm watching. It's the first time he's played with this team, and he just turned 15. So Lou and I were talking before you guys came on the podcast about my son's ability to jump. He's got a really high vertical jump and he's really athletic. And so he was jumping up really high and he was dunking the ball, you know, so he's pretty young to be dunking a ball. And I can see him, because he's 15, because of the world he's growing up in, I could see him almost apologizing for how high he was jumping. So he would dunk it kind of gently, Like, even though he could dunk it really hard, he was kind of just dunking it because the other kids can't dunk. So I asked him, I go, Axel, why don't you just go up and bang that ball and show everybody what is about to happen in this game? And he said, you know what, Dad, I didn't want to look like I was showing off and like showing up all of the other players.
I want to make them feel bad.
Don't want to make them feel bad. So I'll ask everybody on this podcast, if Axel did go up and jumped as high as humanly possible and dunked that ball as athletic and as hard and as fast as he possibly could, would that have inspired both teams? Or would that have made them go, oh, I can't do that. I'm a shrinking violet now. I think the former is the truth. I think the kids would go, wow, that kid is inspiring. That kid's only 15. I'm 15. If he can jump that high, why can't I? I'll just go up to him after the game and I'll ask, how do you do that? Well, what did you train? What's your bounce workout? Tell me. That's more inspiring. But yet here we are. Here's a 15-year-old who should be, full of this expression of his athleticism, that is apologizing for it for fear he's going to show everybody up and make them feel bad. Well, I think he would actually get them to work harder and be more inspired if he fulfilled on his birthright, which is to be this expressive athlete. So now think of your own life. Think of your own life where you're tapping on the brakes, going, well, I don't want to look too good because that might show everybody up at the wedding, or I don't want to dress too fancy, or I don't want to be the best speaker in the world. Maybe if I'm mediocre, everyone else will feel better about themselves. Well, that's the world we live in now. So now, if you watch the news media, they're promoting mediocrity like that's as high as we should possibly shoot for. They actually say, Lou, I hear them say this, you could reach middle class and that's all that you should hope for. And I'm like, what's being promoted to us? It doesn't make any sense to me. Think about the people in your life that inspired you the most. Like, if you were ever inspired by somebody who was a married man or a married woman, you would be looking at their devotion. You'd be looking at their commitment to that marriage, right? You wouldn't be looking at their like, well, I just drag the ball and chain around, not really digging the marriage. Is that inspiring? That's not inspiring, but you're not making anybody feel better about marriage, right? But if you go, you know what? I love the partnership that my wife and I have built. And we built it based on respect for one another's leadership values. That is much more inspiring and moves the dial so much more. And we keep being told that that's going to make other people jealous. I have found when other people get jealous, they get to work too. They get to work on what you're inspiring them to be. So why not? Why would we be born with this as this organism that has this ultimate potential that is it's untold? Like, we don't even know what our potential is. It's so grand. And so is our job in this lifetime to fulfill on about 5% of that potential? Is that inspiring to anybody? Or maybe if we get up to 6, 7, 10%, is that inspiring people? What if we fulfilled on the whole thing? What if we fulfill, what if we like actualized our potential? That's inspiring to people. Now, there are some people who won't be inspired by that, right? But those aren't your people anyway, so don't even worry about them.
Next. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't conform your way into freedom. And I'm talking about personal freedom. right? We do not, as Bo was just describing, we don't get to express our essence and our excellence and who we are born to be by conforming to what the status quo wants. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Yet that is the narrative. And the narrative is increasing about conforming into mediocrity and status quo and be a sheeple, right? That's not who you are. And that's why you're also listening to this podcast. That's why at the end, Bo's going to give an opportunity to tap into a 3-day challenge, which I'll segue into in a second here about story, right? Because, we'll segue into it right now. And that is, so in the very beginning, I shared the intro with Bo, but I didn't share I've traveled the world, and I've sat in countless events and seminars and retreats, literally all over the globe, to keep learning and growing myself, to find out where I'm playing small, where I'm hiding, where are my fears at, how do I go to the next level? And because I know if I can't grow in comfort. So the only way to do that is be outside the comfort zone. Is one of the things Bo teaches. And when I first saw him, he walked out on the stage and started delivering. And I was transformed in a way that I've been around the block in audiences and on stages. This man lives in a rarefied air because of the work that he's put into his crafts, plural. And one of his fortes is his ability to reach out and grab your heart and soul while he is speaking. And it's just phenomenal. And as soon as I experienced that, I went, whoa, how does he do that? That's something I have to learn. And so that's why I started following around like a puppy dog going, hey, can I bring my little paper and sit next to you? And I'm going to sit at the feet of the masters and learn from this man. Absolutely incredible. So on that story, right, there's so many different attributes under the umbrella of story. Yet one synopsis. Stories, the ones we tell ourselves, can either keep us trapped in hell and victimhood or set us free and strive into excellence, right? There's a million other options in between, but those are the polarities. And we get to choose. And if you keep listening to the current media, it's going to keep you trapped in hell because that's a story that they're feeding you, which is against yourself, right? So how do you get to choose to set yourself free? And we get to change our stories, no matter where we're at, right? There's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt, psychologically, basically, guilt is I've done something wrong, so I feel guilty about it. Shame is I am wrong, right? That's a whole different animal. Either way, those are stories, and we can process and heal from those and move forward to remember who we really are. We are not our circumstances. You're the driver, not the vehicle. And the driver is pure love, pure potential, pure energy, right? The rest is just crap that our psychology is bought into as a story, right? And so Bo is a master at story. So first question is, why did you, after leaving the NFL, why did story become so powerful for you personally, and then to take it to the world professionally?
Yeah, story saved my butt. Just so everybody knows, saved my life. So, I was an NFL player for many years. And if you notice, when people stop playing in the NFL or stop playing at any high level sport that they've trained their whole life for, bad things usually happen when they're done. When they can no longer play that game, bad things tend to happen. Drinking, womanizing, abusing, hurting yourself and others. That's a certain story, right? That most ex-professional athletes live. And I just remember saying, listen, I trained myself to be the best in the world at one thing. And that one thing was hurting people. So I played the position of safety, which back in the 80s was a position that was very, your job was to throw your head 25 miles per hour into other people's bodies and hurt them and intimidate them so that they don't want to play anymore. They don't want to catch the ball anymore. That was the rules have changed now. But that's how it was. So the one thing I did best was hurt people. I was fast, I was fearless, and I would throw my body into people. Well, when I got done, I just remember being carted off the field on a gurney and saying to myself, oh my gosh, I have been trained to do one thing my whole life, that is hurt people. And now I've got to enter the civilian world, and that's my greatest asset. That is probably not going to translate too well to the civilian world. And I think maybe the best place for me might be prison. Right? So what I do best really works well in prison, I thought. So in lieu of skipping that whole prison world, I chose to get on a stage and express myself physically and verbally on a stage like I did on NFL fields. I said, if I can master that, which I'm sure I can given the time and given the coaching, I'll be able to make a living on a stage instead of on a football field, if I can do that. So I immediately moved to New York City. I started studying playwriting, performing, movement, physicality, voice, everything I could learn about what it takes to tell a story. And I did it in New York because that's where all the stories were being told on stages. And I figured if I could master that, I could make a living and avoid prison all at the same time. So that's good news for me. And so that's why I chose it. So I moved there and I went to every kid in my class, because I had already had a career. So these were kids in my performance classes, my acting classes, my writing classes. They were like fresh out of college. I had already played in the NFL. And I said to them, I go, who's the best at this thing I'm trying to learn? Who is that? Who's the best at this? I want to know. And at that time, it was 1990. Everybody said, oh, that's Al Pacino. And I'm like, cool. Where's he? And they were all like, all these kids are like, I don't know where he is. He's, he's probably on a movie set or on a stage somewhere. And I said, no, you guys don't understand. I need to talk to that dude. If he's the best at what I want, I got to know him. He's got to tell me how he did it, because only he could tell me how to get there. So lo and behold, within a few months, I was at Al Pacino's house on Thanksgiving, not on Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving break. So there was snow all over the ground. He lived just across the George Washington Bridge from Manhattan, still in New York State, right on the water. And I just remember getting out of this car and walking up to Al Pacino's house. And I'm like, shit, I never met him before. I've seen his movies. I'm walking up and Al Pacino comes out of his house and he goes, hey, Bo, welcome. I'm Al Pacino. And I was like, no shit, man, you're the Godfather. And I go into Al Pacino's house and it's exactly like you guys and gals are all visualizing right now. It looked like a scene from Goodfellas. There was like 15 Italians in the kitchen stirring pastas and gravies. And it was like a scene out of a movie. Anyway, Al Pacino became a mentor and he told me exactly what miles I had to run to get there. So I said, okay, I'll run those miles because I know how to do that. I know how to work. It'll take me some time, but I'll learn it. I'll get it. And I did. And so, 10 years later, 15 years later, I'm opening a play in New York on opening night, a play that I wrote and I'm the only guy in. Right. And the New York critics are ready to eat me alive. Right. They go, who is this football player? Thinks he could come into New York City, open a play here on Broadway, and he's the only guy in it. And he wrote the play. That's not going to happen. And so I ran out on stage and I was so nervous, man, because I made a living, running into 350-pound dudes. And that was a lot more fun than facing those critics on opening night. And I ran out. I started doing the play. I make eye contact with a guy, sitting in the fifth row. right on the aisle, and it was Al Pacino.
Mm.
And he just gave me this look and this nod, like, you did it, boy. You did it. And it was like, I remember the day that I left his house. I hadn't seen him in between for that 15 years. But he said to me, he goes, this is going to take you a long time. It's going to take you like 15 years. And I go, good. I work good in those kind of timelines. And so after those 15 years had passed, it was almost like the torch got passed. Like I had trained enough to step into his shadows, to take that mantle. And so I tell you that only because story saved my ass. I got to tell my own story in New York, and I told that story 1,300 times. I told it I went on a 50-city tour. I had 2 runs in New York City, and that thing ran for like 17 years, that play. And I learned that the most valuable thing that I have is to be able to speak and be in front of an audience, both physically, which is most of your expression is physical, right? So that worked well for me. And being that you and me, like we talked about earlier, we're predator animals, right? With instincts. So if you access that while you're on stage, that goes a long way. What I learned was that all the businesses and all the CEOs that own these businesses and all the entrepreneurs that ever saw that play came backstage, and they would say to me and my wife was a producer of the show, they would say, can you teach our company how to do what you just did? And I thought, well, I guess I could. I was taught how to do it. So I just have to retrace my steps and start to train people like that. So I guess I could. So I started doing that. I started training sales teams, executive teams, big companies, small companies, single owner entrepreneurs, coaches, other speakers on how to do what I was taught to do on stage. And then our business, which we didn't even know we had a business, exploded in these ways, because everyone knows, through the history of time, that story is the key to the kingdom to growing your voice, your vision, and your company, your business. Like, it just draws clients to you because people can't attach to data. There's no human connection. People can't connect to a slideshow. There's nothing to connect to in a slide. There's only human to human connectivity. And the only way to do that is to share yourself, mostly your struggles. And that's how people connect to you. Not only that, but the reason storytelling is so valuable now, given the last 2 years, what we've been under, is the trust level is so low in our culture. Like, remember when you used to trust everybody? Remember those days? Like, you trust your teacher. If somebody had a white coat on, you just trusted them. Like, if someone had doctor in front of their name, you just trusted them. If someone had expert in front of their name, you just said, I trust them. Somebody standing at a podium giving a speech, oh, I trust them. But do you do that anymore? No, you don't. You don't trust any of them, regardless of doctor, regardless of white coat, regardless of a podium. You don't trust anymore, and neither does the rest of the world. Well, who is now in position? Who is now in the catbird seat to restore trust that's been eroded over time? The storyteller. And that's you and me. That's you and me. Now, story has been around, obviously, for millennia. It has been effective all that time, and people get lazy about it. They don't use it. They don't use their personal story, which is what I often use and want to teach you to use. So once you start to share your own story, what happens is the world begins to trust you. And then when they trust you, they begin to follow you, and they want to go deeper with you, because it's so rarefied. It's rarefied air that you trust anybody anymore. So as soon as you start to share yourself, watch the clients start to grow. And my wife and I found out that, wow, our company just exploded because we're brave enough and we're willing to share ourselves, like our real self, not phony self, our real self, our real struggles. And as soon as we do that, our company grows. And so will yours. And so that's why Story Lou, especially now, man, if you can master your own personal story, just the story. I know you must think your life is mundane, like I do too, right? But it's not to other people. It's inspiring to other people. And if you have the bravery and the courage to share that with people, since time, that has been effective. And since time, courage and bravery are rewarded. Nothing else is rewarded in our lifetime, not necessarily. But courage has always been rewarded since time. That's why we want to be courageous in this moment and be able to get in front of people, share ourselves, warts and all, and let them connect with us and go further with us. And that's how we've built our company. And that's how I recommend you do the same.
Ladies and gentlemen, so I've been blessed to be around and learn from Bo for a number of years now. And one of the things that I can put my heart and soul on the table by saying this is core values for me. Well, there's a bunch, but authenticity and congruency are at the top of the food chain, honor and integrity, but authenticity and congruency. And this man permeates that. So as he and I were talking before we hit live on the call here, that there's a lot of people in the world that are successful in one or two areas of their life, but very few in the entire concentric ring of domains of their life. And Bo is one of them. And I say that not to blow smoke, I say it because I see it and I watch it. There's not been a place where he has put on some BS and I got to see something else differently over here, because I'm empathic, and when that happens, I'm done. So if somebody's talking stuff and they don't back it up, I'm out. And he's never done that in all the years I've known him. So I highly recommend that you tap into his work and start by saying yes to this 3-day challenge that he's offering. It's I'll let him share it. The 3-day challenge about story to scale your business. And before you start thinking, well, maybe I don't have a business or I don't have this. You have a business of some sort. If you're a parent, you got a business of raising kids, right? So there's always, let alone if you're a CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation, story is king, as Bo says. And learning the craft of being able to bond authentically, not by fluff, not by telling people what you think they want to hear, by sharing yourself in a deep, intimate way, possibly in a way you might not want to. And that's the way you end up needing to go, because that's what's going to create rapport and trust, as Bo just said, because it's gone. Not only in the narrative right now, it's you've been taught to be afraid of everyone, your neighbors, your own family members. You've been taught to be afraid of everyone because someone's going to give you something or do something to you. That's pure victimhood. But that's the model. That's the narrative. Be afraid. No. Transcend and go back and to know who you are and trust. World of difference on how you get to live your life. So, Bo, if you wouldn't mind sharing the 3-day challenge, and then we'll have in the show notes, you'll have the link and to be able to access, ladies and gentlemen. So please do yourself a favor. Click on that link and participate in this 3-day challenge.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Thank you for this opportunity, because I think this is so critical right now. February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we're going to do the challenge. And it's choose your story, scale your business. Choose your story. That's you choosing one of your stories. You've got many. And that's what's going to scale your business. I'm going to talk about that. That's how my wife and I have scaled our business. Again, it's February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1 hour a day only for the challenge. We'll go 3 days in a row, and I'm going to show you why this is the fastest way to build and scale your business for 2022. So all you got to do right now, and we'll put it in the show notes, is text challenge. Text the word challenge to 323-310-5504. I'll repeat that. Text the word challenge to 323-310-5504, and I will get you signed up. 323-310-5504. Text the word challenge to that number and we will get you signed up. We'll spend those 3 days together, an hour a day. And so that you're able to choose the story that's most effective for your company, for your business, for your coaching business, for your speaking career, for if you're the CEO, if doesn't matter. This works in all occupations and it really moves the dial. And look, Lou just talked about it. In a world that is going in the opposite direction of humanity. So do you think separating people is a human thing or inhuman, right? So us humans are pack animals, like lions, like wolves, like dogs. Well, we're pack animals. We're meant to be together. This is how we've survived. So in a world that is trying to separate us, we are going to put us back together. We're going to go in the opposite direction of the inhumane world of let's be separate. What do they do? What do they do in prison? They keep those guys separate, right? They separate them in their little cells, right? And then what happens to the worst of those people in prison? Where do they go? They go to solitary confinement, because that is punishment. That is not human, right? Our job, think about your new job. What if your new job, starting today, is to put people together? Well, to do that, you have to earn their trust. And the fastest and quickest way to earn their trust is to share yourself, physically and verbally. And Lou knows what I'm talking about when I say physical. You have to be a physical animal to share your communication, to share your story, because the body cannot lie. The body will not lie. So people trust your body a lot more than what's coming out of your mouth. So we've got to get that all squared away so that your body is expressing exactly what we want it to express, because people are going to trust this thing and follow you. Now, that means you're going in 180 degrees the opposite direction of the rest of the culture. Isn't that cool? What does that guarantee us? What does that guarantee you and me and Lou? It guarantees us leadership. If you're going with the tide, you don't get to lead. There's no leadership there. You're following sheep. If you go 180 degrees counter to the culture, guess what you automatically are? Leader, captain. And you get to call the shots, and you get to build the company as big or as small as you want to. That's a cool life. That's the life I'd like you to have.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, at the highest levels of neurobiology, social interaction is critical. And there's no mistake, there's no accident that the powers that be are looking and to continually create separation, right? Which creates this isolation, which starts messing this thing up, right? Because this thing isn't connected to others. What Bo offers and teaches at the highest levels is to reconnect that first within yourself first, and then for others. And as you do that, especially in this day and age where there's so many people now that are becoming experts with a weekend pass. So they're on Zoom, right? How do you compete in an area where there's like 100 million people now holding classes on Zoom and offering themselves up? You become unique by telling your story. That's how you stand out. Because people will connect with your authenticity when they resonate, right? Another thing that I love what he teaches is, in essence, it's a form of energetic polarity. By speaking your truth, you will remove the people. No, they will self-select them out. So you don't end up attracting people you don't want to work with, right? Because it's just a waste of time for everybody. And therefore, you only attract the people who are ready to engage in what you are presenting and offering, right? That in itself is worth your weight in gold, because you're now playing with the people that are ready to participate in what you're doing, right? So text challenge to 323-310-5504. And again, I'll have that in the show notes, so you'll have a hyperlink and both the numbers and the code. And if you want to tap into more of what Bo offers, boeason.com. That's B as in boy, O as in Oscar, Eason, EASON.com. Look this man up and start to get into his world to set yourself free and be of greater impact for those that you serve in whatever capacity that is. So I want to thank you for tuning in to the TAO-Living, the Art of Living, as we help you remember that you're the driver and not the vehicle, so you can walk your life in trust. And Bo, thank you so much for your time, my friend. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you anytime I get that opportunity. And thank you for sharing with everybody here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Lou. Love visiting with you guys. And I love these high-level conversations that you have and that we're able to have together. So really, really an honor for me too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for tuning in to the TAO-Living podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorletto.com, LOUCORLETO.com, to receive your free training, The Operator's Manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.